بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. تحية طيبة لكم أعزائي الطلبة، أتمنى الصحة والسلامة للجميع بعون الله تعالى. Today I'm going to explain chapter 9. It's about sensation and perception processes. Firstly, we talked about in our early lectures about many perspectives of psychology. We explained that there are many theories that showed how we learn and the nature of our behavior, the nature of our mind. We saw that these theories vary from each other because there are many psychologists' views. We concluded that in psychology there are two major theories. The first is behavioral theory, the second is cognitive theory. In behavioral theory, there are focusing on the observational behavior, so that behavioral theory focuses on the direct behavior of a human beings. It's believed that there are many factors influence the behavior, such as stimulus and consequences. Behavioral psychologists relatively ignore the role of mind, but cognitive theories believed that our mental process is very essential to form and create our responses. Thus, they focused on indirect behavior or internal process اللي بنسميها أيضا mental processes أو intellectual processes العمليات العقلية. إذن علماء النفس المعرفي ركزوا في تعلم السلوك أو في ظهور السلوك على حدوث عمليات عقلية داخل عقل الإنسان internal internal processes such as attention, perception, remembering, thinking, reasoning, and imagining, and so on. Among these mental processes, there is a perception process. Look here. This chapter will focus on the field of psychology concerned with the nature of information obtained through the senses and the way in which we interpret such information. So that we have here two processes. The first is sensation, the second is perception. بداية في عنا عملية الإحساس، العملية التي تسبق عملية الإدراك. Yes, and there is a sequence in processing for information. The first process is receiving information. This information will be خلينا نسميها من الأول الستيمولس، أوكي، المثيرات or الستيمولاي، المثير أو المثيرات stimulus or stimuli. These information, yes, in general, will be received by human being or an organism. Then these will pass through our senses, 5 senses, and then our brain will interpret such information. Now look here, we will skip these sequence processes, please, to talk about the way of receiving information. We receive information firstly in 2 dimensions by the sense of sight, and then our brain will interpret and process this information so that we enable see things in 3 dimensions. This means that information from the 3-dimensional real world is received through our senses in 2 dimensions and processed to provide a basis for our interaction with the environment. Focus here when we say that information from the 3-dimensional real world is received through our senses, okay, in 2 dimensions and processed to provide a basis for our interaction. Return back here. Return back. Information received through our senses in 2 dimensions. Yes, اللي بدنا نركز عليه هون إنه المعلومات اللي بتلقاها الإنسان وبستقبلها للمرة الأولى في بعدين فقط، لكن كيف يدركها على أنها ثلاثية الأبعاد؟ يتم إدراكها من خلال الدماغ. عملية سهلة، إنه اللي بدنا نفهمه من هذا الموضوع موضوع 2 dimensions or 3 dimensions. 2 dimensions لاستقبال المعلومات by our senses من خلال حواسنا، خاصة sense of sight، خاصة اللي هي حاسة البصر. من خلال حاسة البصر يتم إدراك المثيرات للمرة الأولى أو الأوبجكت اللي بتحيط فينا، طبعا من خلال بعدين فقط. لكن the interpretation of this information within the brain results in three-dimensional perception. This perception of depth depends on the brain's use of a number of clues. Now this process of perceiving بصير عندنا عملية interpretation، عملية تفسير، عملية processing، معالجة للinformation. لما نحكي معالجة أو عملية إدراك فهي تمت في three-dimensional perception. Yes. وبالآخر نحن نستطيع رؤية المثيرات أمامنا بثلاث أبعاد، نستطيع أن نرى الكرسي، الطاولة بثلاث أبعاد، أي شيء أمامنا بثلاث أبعاد وهو الشكل الصحيح له. لكن بحكي لنا إنه بتتكون الصورة على شبكية العين بشكل سطح ذي بعدين فقط. لكن يقوم الدماغ here, look here, this perception of depth depends on the brain's use of a number of clues. يقوم الدماغ بدمج الصورتين معا، يقوم بمراعاة الفروق. هي الكلوز اللي بنحكي عنها في عدة معالجات. There are many processing clues to prepare the picture or object or stimuli in three-dimensional, such as إنه الدماغ بيعمل مراعاة فروق بين الصورتين وبحسب المساحة أو المسافة بين المثير والعينين، مما ينتج عن ذلك إدراك المثير بشكل ثلاثي الأبعاد بسموه depth perception or perception of depth، إدراك العمق depth perception. Now here we're gonna talk about sensation and perception processes. These processes are fundamental topics because our behavior is so much a reflection of how we react to and interpret stimuli from the world around us. هذا ما أكد عليه علماء النفس المعرفيين إذ ركزوا على فكرة أن سلوكياتنا، جميع سلوكياتنا هي نتيجة لعدد من العمليات العقلية التي تقوم بها أدمغتنا من خلال معالجة ما يتم استقباله من خلال حواسنا. إذن the sensation is the process that occurred firstly, then perception will be occurred after that. Why? Because we receive information by our senses, 5 senses: sense of sight, the sense of hearing, the sense of smell, the sense of taste, and finally the sense of touch. Now here, sensation and perception, we have to know that cognitive psychologists focused on the topic of information processing، عملية معالجة المعلومات. When we say information processing, we mean that the brain gives the information many things to be interpreted. The first is order, the second is meaning، بيعطونا الترتيب للمعلومات، meaning لهاي المعلومات. This process called also sensation interpretation. So that we have a theory of information processing، عملية معالجة المعلومات. عملية معالجة المعلومات. Now in this paragraph we show the importance of these processes, sensation and perception. These processes are important to supply the data we use for learning and remembering, for thinking and problem solving, yes, and to communicate with others. So that these processes are very important and essential to communicate, for example, with others. يعني نحن بصير عندنا عملية إدراك وعملية تمييز نعم، عملية تمييز لكل ما نقوم به من أفعال، لكل ما يمر علينا من مثيرات نقوم بإدراكها، التمييز بينها. بالآخر يصير عندنا كمان for experiencing emotions. experiencing نحن نعم واعون لمجموعة انفعالات اللي بنمر فيها، من سعادة، من حزن، من خوف، من قلق، إلى آخره من المشاعر والانفعالات emotions and feelings. نحن من خلال عملية الإحساس والإدراك بنكون aware of ourselves. yes أكيد بنكون نحن واعين لأنفسنا. without sensation and perception we would not form thoughts or feelings. بدون الإحساس وعملية الإدراك ما راح يكون عندنا building and forming للthoughts and الفيلينجز اللي لازم نحن نكونهم لدينا بطريقة مدركة حتى نستطيع أن نتعامل مع مثيرات ومواقف الحياة. Please, my students, focus with me. I would like to briefly explain the sequent processes of sensation and perception, right? Then I will explain the concepts and the operations in detail. Firstly, we receive a stimulus. These stimuli shape the source of physical energy. These physical energy could be sound waves or visual waves or heat pressure. Okay, the first step, we receive stimuli from our environment. These stimuli shape or form something called physical energy. These physical energy are divided in three major things. The first is sound waves, the second is visual, third is heat pressure. These are stimuli. We are receiving it from the environment. Then what happens? These physical energy or stimulus or stimuli خليها stimuli جملة من stimuli أو جملة من المثيرات سوف تصل will reach to our sensory system by our senses. Okay, on these sensory system we have what the receptor cells. خلايا المستقبلة. الخلايا المستقبلة موجودة على النظام الحسي أو أعضاء الحس لدينا. These receptor cell will send nerve impulses to our brain. Okay, so that there is an operation called transformation or transduction. Transduction عملية التحويل. عملية التحويل. Now in detail, to have a better understanding of the subject matter of sensation and perception, we need to define related basic terms. The first term is stimulus. It's a source of physical energy مثل ما حكينا that produces a response. So that a stimulus produces a response in the sense organs. There is a stimulus, then there is a response in the sense organs اللي هي عملية sensation. The energy could be sound waves, light waves, and heat pressure to which an organism is capable of responding. يعني بالآخر eventually a human being will respond to these stimulus. So that stimulus and response. وممكن إن نحكي إنه a sensation is a response to that energy by a sensory system. Stimulus and sensation have cause and effect relationship. The relationship between a sensation process and the stimulus is a cause, and the effect is what is the relationship cause and result or cause and effect. الكوز stimulus. بعدين في عنا عملية responding اللي هي عملية الإحساس sensation for this stimulus. According to the stimulus concept, there are two aspects or two domains, the quality of stimulus and the quantity of stimulus. The quality of a stimulus refers to the kind of sensation it produces. Yes, for example, yes, now in sensation process, it's the process by which an organism's sense organs respond to a stimulus. إذن هي عملية respond to a stimulus حكيناها. It's the process by which stimulation of receptor cells in the eyes, ears, nose, mouth, and surface of the skin sends nerve impulses to the brain. sensation عملية الإحساس هي ليس فقط receiving the information but sending nerve impulses to the brain by what? By the receptor cells. After reaching the brain, they are registered as a touch, a sound, a taste, and a splash of color. Hence, sensation can be taught as an organism's first encounter with sensory stimuli. Transduction process, it's a process of transforming for the physical energy into patterns of neural impulses to our brain. Yes, this gives rise to sensory experiences or stimulate to our sensory experiences, then will be sent to our brain by our receptor cells. Number 5, perception. Yeah, it's the process by or whereby the brain interprets sensations اللي هي المثيرات الحسية. Our brain will give زي ما حكينا will give these sensations meaning, order, interpretations for many or according many clues. Giving information, order, and meaning, it takes into account experiences. First clue stored in our memory. The second is taking into account the context in which the sensation occurs and our internal states such as emotions and motivations. It's the process of forming hypotheses about what the senses tell us. This means that sensation stimuli يعني المثيرات الحسية will be received, then yes, our brain or the process of forming hypotheses for these stimuli that we are receiving. Look to the example here. Hearing sounds and seeing colors are sensory processes. أكيد hearing sounds. Now, after we have talked about the perception process, we have to talk about the factors that affect our perception or the perception process. The first factor is context and expectation. In an experiment by Brunner and Monterin in 1955, they showed that the ambiguous for their participant of the experiment, the ambiguous figure such as here 13, okay, figure 13 or number 13 and the letter B, the physical stimulus 13 or the figure is the same in each case, okay, but is perceived differently. Why? They asked their participants, Brunner and Mentoren, asked their participants of the experiment if this figure is 13 or B letter. Okay, the result was what? These figures or these stimulus perceived differently because the influence of the context in which it appears. Now, please focus. If I ask you about this figure, what the answer will be? The answer may be what? Maybe letter 13. Some students will answer me that is what 13 number. Some of them will answer me or will call this as letter B. This. Okay. In other words, if I draw or write 3 letters over each other with the middle letter B letter, and I draw 3 numbers next to each other. In 2 cases, the ambiguous figure at the middle. Okay. Now we have a column of letters A ambiguous في الوسط الambiguous stimulus A B C. البي غير واضح. وفي عنا we have a row of numbers 12 13 14. هلا ال 13 هل هو B لما صار في عنا تقاطع، هل هو B or 13 number؟ فهون بحكي لك وين تركيزك، انت بالاخر ايش بتعطيني تفسير وادراك لهذا المثير الambiguous stimulus. If you focus on the column of letters, you will call this ambiguous stimulus as a letter B, but if you focus on the row of numbers, you will perceive it as 13. Yes. هذا الإشي بيفسر اختلاف تفسير الناس وإدراك الناس للموقف نفسه حسب تركيزنا على عدة سياقات على نفس الموقف. السياق الذي نركز عليه تدرك مثيراته. Yes. ويتم التوقع expectation for these stimuli within the situation. You will perceive it as or according the amount of focusing on. الآن كثير ما نسأل الناس حول نفس الموقف، الأشخاص المتواجدين في الموقف، أحداث هذا الموقف. Now, how our motivation affects our perception. Studies have shown the effects of motivation upon the way in which things are perceived. There is a study that conducted by Sully and Hay in 1956. They asked the children aged 4 to 8 to draw pictures of Santa Claus. طبعا هذا الأوكيجن كان قريب. As Christmas approached, Santa Claus become larger. The drawing of Santa Claus as Christmas approached, the drawing was very perfect, was very beautiful, was accurate, done by children. Why؟ بنحكي هنا السبب إنه كانوا الأطفال very motivated, very or highly motivated by this occasion. Okay, and they are excited, they are happy for the Christmas occasion. The Santa Claus become larger, nearer, more elaborate, a more decorated costume, and with the Santa Claus with a bigger bag of presents. Okay, لكن after that, Sully and Hay asked the same children to draw Santa Claus again after the Christmas. The case was different. Why? Because the drawing was different. Santa shrunk and his present bag all disappeared. يعني كان imperfect drawing because they are now with low motivation. low motivation انعكس هذا على إدراكهم للرسمة، إدراكهم كيف يتم عمل الرسمة بالإدراك العالي. كيف كان الفرق بين الرسمة عندما كان إدراكهم. Now we have to know the effect of emotion on our perception. There is a study by McGinnis. McGinnis presented neutral stimulus such as table, apple, chair, or tap words for his participants to measure the emotional response. the emotional response for hearing taboo words or bad words, and emotional response when they are hearing stimulus, neutral stimulus, or neutral words such as table, apple, chair. These emotional responses for the participants of this study was measured by galvanic skin responses, by cables that are connected on the skins of participants, and measure their emotional response. Yes, it was found that the taboo words had a higher recognition threshold and were also accompanied by greater reading on this galvanic skin response. This means that when we are with good or bad emotion, this will increase our perception for any stimulus. Now, sensory adaptation will affect our perception. How? By adaptation and a prolonged exposure of stimuli, a change in the attitude and expectation of an individual. It's an adjustment in sensory capacity following long period of exposure to stimuli. Our attention to any stimuli will affect the perception process. Attention is a general term referring to the selective aspects of perception which function so that at any instant an organism focuses on certain features of the environment to the exclusion of other features. This means that when we pay attention to any stimuli, then we will perceive these stimuli perfect or imperfect way. Finally, we have come to the end of our class today. I will record the second part of chapter 9 with chapter 10, inshallah. I wish you success. Goodbye.